Legislative spring breaks over, campaign season in full swing, and the final push for the General Assembly is on. And we are joined by the House Minority Leader, candidate for governor, Quade. Representative, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Is there a busier time of year than the week after spring break of an election year?
Absolutely not. It's throw in the state budget on top of that, and man, it's been a rough week.
And now the kid groups start coming. There's a different energy in that Capitol after spring break. There's a bit of a laid-back, kind of jovial, collegial attitude. But after spring break, the tension starts to hit. There's a lot more people in the building. There's just an energy there, especially around the House. There's an energy to all those people.
Yeah, and it's a realization we've got 7 weeks left to get everything done. And we haven't gotten a whole lot done so far. So all heat is on everybody.
Well, your year is not over in 7 weeks. You're running for governor. Tell me how the campaign's going.
It's going really well. Having a great time traveling the state and getting to know people, spending a lot of time getting endorsements and really building the infrastructure and foundation so that when session's over, we can hit the ground running.
Seen a lot of organized labor coalesce behind you.
Absolutely. Labor has been a partner and friend of mine long before I started running for office, and they're with me now, and it's really an honor to have their support.
Picked up an opponent this week, I saw.
I did.
Interesting. From your neck of the woods, right?
I did, yeah, from down in Springfield.
It was interesting. I watched Ann Wagner build that Republican Party from the ground up and make tough decisions. Sometimes I wonder if the Democrats have the same grit she had to make that happen. Your opponent's got some issues. You have to live in the state 10 years to run for governor, right?
That is correct.
You voted in Chicago 4 years ago. I've already heard Republicans say this could be the greatest thing ever. If he happens to pull off an upset, we're just going to impeach him because he clearly doesn't fit the qualifications. I mean, that's not going to help you, but I mean, it is an odd dynamic of a party that kind of says rich white guys have run the world too much, and they make kind of special rules for rich white guys.
Everybody is entitled to run, and he obviously believes that he...
Well, people who live in Chicago aren't entitled to run for governor in Missouri.
That is a valid point. And I there have been some concerns around the residency that I know there have been some stories brought up and folks have talked about. But, if someone chooses to challenge that, that's decided upon the court. Or, that this is the really first I've heard about the possible impeachment conversations.
Tell me about your campaign, though. When folks walk in that booth in August, what do Democrats need to be thinking about from your side?
I believe that it's super important in 2024 we have a proven leader who understands the dynamics of not only Jefferson City, but our state. I've been working in this space for over 10 years, rebuilding infrastructure in the party and getting folks elected, winning races. And when it comes to 2024, it's not just about the governor's race. It's about abortion rights. It's about earned sick leave. It's about bringing Jefferson City back to a place where we can actually function. And that means flipping Democratic seats in both the state Senate and the state House. And I'm somebody who knows how to do all of those things.
So campaign fundraising, how's that going?
It's always a grind, particularly in a state like Missouri, but it's going well. And we're raising enough to get the job done. And so we're going to keep grinding. I
see you all over the state. It's been interesting to watch your campaign. I saw Claire McCaskill, who was an absolute winner of a politician. She got votes. She ran her marches up in the cities, as any Democrat did. But I watched her go to places like, Wright County and only lose it by, 60-40 instead of 80-20. I always thought you being from Webster County is someone that might be able to go get into some of those huge margins Republicans run up outstate.
Yeah, absolutely. When we look at the pathway to victory, increasing voter turnout in the city is absolutely something we have to do. Some of the stats are in our major cities from anywhere from 44 to 50% turnout. And so absolutely, if we got those numbers up, our statewide would look very different. And we will do that, but that's not enough. We know we're not going to get 90% voter turnout. And so you look at things like Medicaid expansion and stopping right to work, and the ways that we were able to do that was a couple 100,000 votes in the rural communities. And that's absolutely something that we've got to do.
Let me try to fish an opinion about abortion out of you. This abortion IP, it looks like they settled on maybe not the most reserved, but pretty aggressive abortion IP. Heading to the ballot, going to make it, right?
Yes.
So the Republicans come up, it's so interesting. You've been kind enough to do my show for a very long time now. You've been doing my show for so long that Republicans thought single issue things should go on the ballot, right? That was what Clean Missouri was awful. We don't need to confuse and deceive people. The world's come all the way around to, yes, we have to confuse and deceive people. It's been interesting to sit and watch Republicans totally 180 on IP reform.
They absolutely have. Now with the debates that it's been really fascinating to watch over the years how this has evolved. And the debate this year is very bold-faced. Yes, we need to lie to voters on the ballot to get them to vote for something.
Is it a lie or is it deception? I don't think Sean Nicholson lied to anyone. I thought it was deceptive to have a gerrymandering scheme compiles them with kind of silly things like lobbyist reform that was already done. There's no illegal voting. It's just a distraction. it really is Sean Nicholson is the top strategist of the Missouri Republican Party right now.
I think deception or lies is on the eyes of the beholder, right? But what
Do you believe Sean lied about his IP?
Of course,
but it was deceptive.
I think that intent is a big piece of it. But what's shocking to me about the debate this year around initiative petitions is we have had state senators say on record, we know that is ballot candy. We know that is already law, and we're only putting it in there because we want people to vote for it. They're outright saying that they know they're tricking people, and that's the intent. And it's really frustrating but you're right in that this 180.
I feel like the cop in Casablanca right now. There's hypocrisy everywhere. But the Democrats were straightforward. Yes, we're going to try to trick you into drawing more friendly Democrat districts by silly distractions. And Republicans, they are more upfront about it. Almost in a way, I think the Republicans are more honest about it. Yes, we don't think we can pass IP reform without some distractions. So we're going to be deceptive about it. Democrats were like, this isn't deceptive. Like, yes, you're both deceptive. Let's call it what it is. You don't think your gerrymandering plan would have passed without some distractions. Probably wouldn't have. Republicans can't pass IP reform without distractions, so they're trying to not.
Here's the difference. You have lawmakers writing this House Joint Resolution, trying to send it to the ballot, whereas Clean Missouri and the things you're talking about were votes outside that came in.
That's signatures. I mean, I think that is certainly a more inclusive way.
As lawmakers, we should be held to a higher standard.
But many lawmakers on the Democrat side certainly supported Clean Missouri.
They didn't write it, and I think that's different.
There's a difference, but it's a little small. I find it just interesting. Most of the Republicans, I mean, the Democrats have been consistent. We wanted to deceive the hell out of you and get you to vote for our stuff. Republicans like, oh, that's bad. We're better than that. Now check your watch. No, you're not. You're doing the exact same thing. Give me a prediction. The House is going to put all sorts of irrelevant stuff on this IP reform, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be changed quite a bit, and then it'll pass through the House. And can they come to a compromise between the House and Senate again? I don't know that they can.
I think it's interesting to me. Somebody said, well, I only vote for PQs on abortion. I'm like, well, everything to you people is about abortion now. It is interesting how when Roe versus Wade went away, everything in the Republican Party is about abortion. Where abortion's gone, now, seriously, you can't make a motion to adjourn that's somehow being about abortion. Abortion's almost dominated, which I would assume is good for Democrats, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is. But abortion has become such a big staple that we're now even talking about IVF treatments not being morally right.
Explain what that is to folks. I think there's a lot of men that aren't totally understanding of what that is.
Thank you for acknowledging that a lot of men don't understand reproductive health care and that we should be a part of the discussion. So IVF is a treatment that folks all across the country use when they can't get pregnant. And it is a process of taking eggs out of the woman, fertilizing them, and putting them back in. And oftentimes, multiple embryos put back in because it's very rare when they stick. So they might do, 10 to 20. I've never gone through the process, but trying to implant and get pregnant. And sometimes it doesn't work at all. Sometimes you'll get 1 or 2 pregnancies. Sometimes you get a whole bunch of them. And then doctors need to go in and make sure that it's a safe process for that mother. And sometimes remove embryos if it doesn't go how it needs to for them to have a successful pregnancy. IVF is something that is absolutely not political. It is
sounds a little bit pro-life.
If folks want more children to be born in our state, then absolutely, that is a process that so many people use. And what's unfortunate about this abortion conversation is that the extremists in this state have taken it so far, and it is so extreme already. They're trying to find new things to run on, and now they're coming after IVF healthcare. We had a state senator say he does not know if that should be legal.
It's a complicated issue, though, from a political perspective in Missouri. Folks like to vote for pro-life candidates. I mean, just go walk over to the Capitol. There's a bevy of pro-life, far more than pro-choice. But it feels like, to me, this is a pro-life state. When they elect folks right now, they prefer to elect a pro-life candidate. However, I think the pro-life has went so far, they're past where the public is. And it feels to me like if you put something on the ballot, no one reads all those paragraphs, right? But I do think something in people's gut says, I think you're a little too far.
This ballot language for the initiative to protect abortion rights, it also protects all reproductive health care, birth control, IVF. These things that, to your point...
Does it go too far?
I don't think so. What this does is it gives our healthcare choices back to us and our doctors. And
the thing I like about you is you have a sense of people, even when you're taking stands that you're passionate about, like trans kids. You have a sense for where the people of the state are on some of these issues. The people of the state, I think the Republicans are out farther than where the people are. Are you worried about the Democrats going out, not just coming back to where the folks are, but going too far the other way?
I'm not.
You personally have a set of views, but that average Missourian that I think you have a sense for, are you worried you're going to go too far for that person?
I'm not. What has gone too far is the government overreach in Missouri into people's lives, whether that's abortion and healthcare or whether that's education. We got a whole lot of folks who we could have a whole conversation about that.
How about the Democrats saying the Republicans are overreaching into people's lives?
It's been wild. And I'm the first to say it. I got here 8 years ago. I never thought that I would be advocating for personal freedoms and local control every day of my life here. But that's what's happened in our state. The Republicans have been in power for 20 years. The supermajority is fighting amongst each other. You know this. They're all running against each other for everything. And what that has done is taken it so far that small businesses, self-identified Republicans tell me all the time when I'm knocking doors down in my neck of the woods that government is too much, that the Republicans have gone too far. And I think that this abortion issue with no exceptions for rape or incest and very, very few chances for the life of the mother is a perfect example of where our government is in our state. And Republican, independent, libertarian people are mad about it.
I think it's frustrating. I think it is part of the length of this majority. You've done a lot of the common sense, good public policies Republicans advocate for, and the cupboard's a little bit bare.
Yeah, I'm sure
If you were speaker, you would have an entire pantry of things to do because you've been out of power for 20 years. When you've been in power for 20 years, the cupboard's a little bare.
But what I think the voters would like to see is when that cupboard is bare, actual debate and conversation around public policy.
Running government well doesn't get a lot of Facebook likes.
It doesn't, and that's what's unfortunate.
It's a statement on our state, though, as much as our leaders.
Yeah, and it's an unfortunate reality of politics right now in our country.
Who do you want to run against for governor on the Republican side? Who do you want?
Who do I want?
Yeah.
Probably Secretary of State Ashcroft.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
For one, we have gone toe-to-toe quite a bit since I've been here. But I would also just say that I'm somebody who, you know my story, but my family graduated high school. My mom still waits tables today. My dad worked in a factory. I know what hard work is, and I know Missouri voters want somebody who understands what everyday life is like for working class people. And, the Secretary of State and I have very different backgrounds, and we have very different policy stances. And I think that it would, that race would be an easy conversation for voters of what they're voting for.
Jim Crystal Quade, we'll come back and talk about it as the campaign unfolds.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be right back with our opinion maker panel. Rising star Dane Diehl joins us after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
All throughout Missouri, businesses are struggling to find workers. Childcare challenges are a big reason why. Our kids are losing out too. Through high-impact early childhood investments, we can support the workforce of today and better prepare our workforce of tomorrow. Empower families with the resources they need to succeed. Reduce crime and avoid costly interventions, saving taxpayers money. Together, we can make Missouri the best place to work, raise a family, and be a kid.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to Week in Missouri Politics. Dane Diehl, Western Missouri. Welcome back to the show.
Great to be back, Scott. Thanks for having me.
Chad Perkins from the great Northeast, right?
Always a pleasure to be with you,
Love
Scott.
seeing you in Louisiana. Is there a prettier town in Missouri than Louisiana?
Ideal, just absolutely perfect.
LA Glenn's the best. Betsy Fogle down in Springfield. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Aaron Crossley from Independence. Filings closed. Legislature's in the final throes here. One of the busiest times of the electoral calendar. Were you surprised by anybody that filed this week?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. I can't think of anybody off the top of my head that was super surprising. I think there were some surprises last minute. I know
I was a little surprised that the speaker switched races, Secretary of State. Yeah. A little surprised Senator Coleman switched over. I was a little surprised that the guy that voted in Chicago a few years ago is running for governor of Missouri.
Right. I was surprised about that.
I watched Dan Wagner have to make terribly tough choices to take the Republican Party from similar place to where the Democrat Party is today to the dominant place it is. It was not easy, tough. Russ Carnahan was in a terrible spot, but there's sometimes a reason why the supermajority is hard to get out of, and decisions like taking a filing fee of a guy that clearly is ineligible to run for governor, it's questionable, right?
It's questionable, and I do question his viability. I think that our floor leader, Crystal Quade, got through the primary period pretty unscathed. I don't know that he's a viable candidate to worry about.
Dane Diehl, I mean, you're looking back and you see the Crystal Quade. Any Democrat's going to have a long shot to run for governor in this year in Missouri. But looking down the road, a person that absolutely could run for the Senate, could be a very viable statewide candidate. Then you see the Democrats pull some guy from Springfield that literally voted in Chicago. You have to be resident for 10 years. Next time there's a voting bill, I bet the Mike Hammer comes up, doesn't he?
Absolutely. That was kind of interesting to watch all that play out, and kind of the colleagues across the aisle in the House, how that was kind of handled and where the support was on that. I'm going back, from my side, my party, watching some of the last-minute moves. That was pretty intriguing to me. Everyone was worried about the first day, but the last 2 days, that was pretty intriguing to me, watch some of those changes get made.
I mean, honestly, I do think probably Speaker Plocker, he sees David Wassinger get in. David Wassinger can put money in. Mm-hmm. Ran before, got the MRL endorsement. Mm-hmm. Probably a better shot at Secretary of State. Then that field got kind of crazy of Senator Coleman. I would say she had a long shot to run for Congress. The ground didn't lay very well for her. Not being from that district, going all the way over to Jeff City, it just didn't feel like that was the best shot she could have had. Probably better in that Secretary of State's race, right?
That's probably right. I think that the geography mattered in that 3rd congressional district as far as where you live and how that lays out. Not so much a factor in the statewide race. That last day was interesting to watch.
Senator Coleman, I mean, she's very talented.
Very much, very smart. Of course, the Speaker Plocker hops in there.
You already have Adam Schwadron, one of your colleagues.
That's right.
Talented guy, putting together a good war chest.
That's right.
Denny Hoskins, who I think when he drove to Jeff City Monday was the front runner. Mm-hmm. Then everybody jumped in the boat, right?
And Shane Scholler, of course, is down in the Southwest kind of by himself. So there's something to be said for that as well.
I think if you've met Shane Scholler at any event in Southwest Missouri, you're going to love the guy. You're going to vote for him. There's a base that Shane has that no one could probably penetrate. And if you split that primary electorate up enough, that base might be enough to win.
That's right. And you've got a very interesting lieutenant governor's race as well.
Oh, it's going to be it is going to be the down ballot. It's going to be the most fun down ballot I could ever remember. Betsy Fogle, it was interesting. Mark Osmek gets on the Democrat side. Mm-hmm. Good guy, veteran, solid candidate, running for treasurer. That governor's race, it was surprising to me. Russ Carnahan was in a terrible spot. And he's done a lot of things right. I actually am a fan of Russ's, and I think I'm a fan of the job he's done. He was in an awful spot, but boy, it's got to be a little demoralizing when you let a guy just parachute in who I just don't know how you say there's no voter fraud when you say, well, you lived here 10 years to be governor. You voted in Chicago. You committed fraud once, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing I'll add is Crystal's been up here doing the work for 8 years, and she was the reason I'm sitting in this chair. And I can't wait to watch her run a really good race and be a competitive top of the ticket for the Democrats in Missouri.
She was on the show earlier. I asked her who she wants to run against. Who do you think she wants to run against? Which Republican for governor does she want to take on?
I would imagine Jay Ashcroft.
That's what she said, Jay Ashcroft. And let's talk about IP reform. Dane, you've been here the second year?
Second year.
Okay. Long before you were here, there's a thing called Clean Missouri. And the Democrats go with a gerrymandering scheme, and they put a bunch of silly distractions in. There was already ethics lobby reform. You couldn't have the lobbyist gift for the second time. A bunch of asinine things together to pass a gerrymandering scheme. And it was good politics, and it worked. And every person that sat in those chairs that was Republican said, this is terrible. This is deceptive. This is no way to do business. Now, the Republicans have an IP reform. They want to do IP reform. So they're putting a bunch of silly distractions around it. Illegals can't vote. Of course, they can't vote. It's interesting to see how the worms turn. Where do you come down on it?
I being a real guy, you and I resonate on that deal. I sure drive, and my district drives of having more of a voice. I love the concurrent majorities, and those districts being, similar in size. I think that's important for my people. It's something I can get behind.
I think you can make that case to the people of this state without all the other silliness, don't you?
I agree.
Jed, when you break it down, it looks like the House is about to add a bunch of Clean Missouri stuff. It looks like, and really, Sean Nicholson is now the strategist for the Missouri Republican Party.
Well, the fact is, Scott,
in municipal elections elsewhere in the country, places like Boston, places like San Francisco, you've seen the ability for people who are not American citizens to be able to vote on a municipal election. Statewide, I think the law is clear, but I don't think there's anything wrong with adding some language in there to point out that even in a municipal election and a school board election,
I heard
you have to be an American citizen to vote.
Clear questions, one question per vote. Put 2 things on the ballot.
And the fact of the matter is, once again, Scott, there's nothing wrong with making it crystal clear you have to be an American citizen to vote in any election in the United States. I don't think there's anything wrong.
I think the Republicans are smart enough they could ask that in 2 questions.
Potentially, but there's no reason to be verbose about it. Let's.
There is a reason to be verbose about it because they don't want to ask that second question. They might not win.
Absolutely, I think it muddies the waters. I think there's a level of dishonesty to conflate the conference.
Was it dishonest what Clean Missouri did when they conflated some silliness? Just the exact same thing. Was it dishonest then?
I think it's fair to look at how we add ballot candy on to different measures and make sure that we're being clear to voters in what we're asking them to vote on.
I think that, personally, it should be harder to amend the Constitution. Yeah. It should also be harder for the legislature to change a statute passed by the voters.
Absolutely.
I think it's totally dishonest. Clean Missouri was great politics and terribly dishonest, and this is terribly the same thing. I mean, there's no difference in what's happening except now the shoe's on the other foot.
Yeah, and I think they know that they have to add on to ballot candy to pass language that most voters would be.
I think it's possible to pass that without it, but it is 50-50 in pick 'em.
Sure.
If you put on the distractions, it makes it easier. Betsy, was Clean Missouri dishonest?
Yeah, I think you're fair to point out that what's good enough for one side should be good enough for the other. And I think kind of more globally about IP reform, in states that are Democratic-led, the Democratic majority is doing the exact same thing that the Republican majority is doing here. It's not about partisanship, it's about power, and I wish we were better in modeling different behavior here in Missouri.
The Supreme Court make a mistake on Clean Missouri and allowing that to go forward. Should the court have said one question on each line and just ask a simple Midwestern straight question?
That was before my time in politics, so I'm not as familiar with it, but I would say, yes, again, what's good enough for one side of the aisle should be good enough for the other.
Prediction. What goes to the ballot? Does the citizen voting and all that stuff go on it?
I think that it will. If it does pass, then it will. But I think that there's still a question on, in the next 7 weeks, can we even get it across?
Does that get done?
I don't think so.
What do you think?
No.
I think it gets done. What do you think?
I'm going to vote for it. If it doesn't get done, it's not because I didn't support it.
I think it gets done.
I do too. At the ballot, does that pass?
I think like some of the issues we talked about, if the rural districts again show up and try to support it, I think it would pass.
I think it actually would have a good chance of passing with a straight-up question. I think with deception, much more likely, right? I mean, I think that's the calculation. That's the calculation Democrats made, calculation the Republicans are making now. What do you think? Does it pass? Would it pass without the other distraction?
Absolutely. It's good language all on its own.
What do you think? Could it pass on its own?
No. It is so easy for us to go and say, your elected officials, your politicians want more power than you have. If you're that's a very simple message. For those that are in favor of that reform, that's a much more convoluted message. For us, it's just about, do you want more power? Do you want less power? And I think people are going to pick having autonomy over their government every single time.
That's a good case, but I do think the Constitution has bingo. It has a lot of things that probably doesn't need your founding documents to have it. It's gotten out of control. I don't know that folks really care, though, right? I think your argument's a little easier to make.
That's what I'm saying. If you're explaining you're losing, we have an easier statement to make.
Explaining you're losing, let's talk about education reform. Right. You got a bill right now that essentially you came together and some of the charter folks are giving about $400 million to public education in order to expand out into some other Boone County and expand ESA programs. I saw Carl Esslinger voted for it. Can't be completely anti-education if Carl Esslinger votes for it.
That's right. All it simply does, Scott, is give parents the ability to choose what's best for their kid. And that's a winning message we can take to the voter every time.
What do you think? I mean, these are tougher issues in rural Missouri than they are maybe in suburban Missouri, but I do think totally stonewalling choice is getting a harder row to hoe for folks. I mean, I know I ran into Aaron Cornman, and it totally made me done with defending public education in the state. I think a lot of Missourians have had the same experience I've had, maybe not as terrible, but similar. I do think at the end of the day, just saying blanketed no to choice is getting harder.
I agree, and I think this bill, kind of threads the needle. It has some good pro-public education pieces in there. We could, worry about the funding, make sure that's there, but we're not promised that in a year. And then also we look at the choice side. There's some incremental changes that, even rural Missouri, we have to consider when we're voting on this thing. So I think maybe a few things get done. I think there's some great people working on analyzing that in the House, and I think this bill, it honestly runs right down the middle and makes a lot of people choose what to support.
Yeah, what do you think? To me, it's a challenge, which I guess makes a good compromise, right? You have a lot of money going to public education, but you do have some incremental changes in school choice. I think in suburban areas, I know that like Carla May has been, she says this is a tough issue because she'd like to see some of that school choice in her district. How do folks in Independence think?
Yeah, I can only speak to my district. What I hear from people in my district is that they're worried about siphoning money off of the top of public schools and sending it behind closed doors to private schools, to parochial schools, to homeschools. Even the homeschool moms in my district are coming out in force against this bill because taxpayers deserve to have oversight over the money that they have in government.
Well, I think their concern is if they take the money, they'll be oversight.
Correct, and rightly so. We should have oversight over how our taxpayer dollars are being spent if we're getting the outcomes that.
Interesting. Homeschool moms, though, they're fine to be left alone. Yeah. Don't send them a check and don't send them a rule book. Just leave them alone.
Absolutely.
My heart's always supposed to be left alone. Absolutely. What do you think? This isn't just an anti-public education bill. This was a compromise. Both sides walked away with a significant amount of money and changes. It's not you're just normal, okay, we're going to vote against a charter school expansion. This one does have things that I think you have to sit and read and consider, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think Representative Diehl said it well. There's a lot of money, a lot of support for public schools. There's also components of the bill that I'm just vehemently against. The expansion of ESAs, sending our taxpayer dollars to schools that don't accept all students based on religion, sexual orientation, those things are very concerning to me. But, as someone who represents the largest school district in the state, it is difficult to know how I'm going to land on this one, and we'll see how it turns out when it comes out of the...
That makes a good piece of legislation, good compromise.
Absolutely. That's how it should be.
Who won the week?
I'm going to go Brad Christ addressing the crime issue around St. Louis and moving incremental moves to make it better whenever it affects all the state.
Yep. Countless small businesses and countless family farmers across the state of Missouri. Curtis Gregory got his Farm Bureau health insurance bill across the line in the House. It would allow Farm Bureau members, and that doesn't just have to be a farmer. It could literally be anyone in the state of Missouri who joins Farm Bureau to be able to buy group health insurance, and that's just tremendous for farmers and small business owners across the state.
A heck of a job by him getting that done. Who won the week?
It's going to be controversial amongst this group, but Missouri State hired Conzo Martin to come back and coach our Missouri State Bears, so I would consider that a win. I'm looking forward to the next year of Missouri State basketball.
Nice. Who won the week?
I'm going to give love to the HDCC for filing 135 out of 163 seats. That's up from 90 in 2022. That's the largest amount since 2008 in a presidential year.
It is an incredible difference since Crystal Quade was elected.
Absolutely.
If you look at this filing and you go back to before she got involved with that, she's done a hell of a job.
It's under her leadership.
I'm going to say David Gregory, St. Louis County. He went down to the border. It was amazing when you talk to people, they actually go down there and see the actual problem. I can tell he was a change guy. Kudos for him going down there and check it out for himself. We'll see you next week. Hope and check us out here on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.